We're gonna have another speaker. It's a guy I met when I was a student in the LA area, and he's still doing what he was doing then, supporting communities that are impacted by oil corporations. This is Kevin Koenig with Amazon Watch, who works with folks in Ecuador. Let's hear it for Kevin.
Woo! Thank you, Jessica. I live in Ecuador. I came up with the Ecuadorians who have been in this, lawsuit that's been going on now for 18 years against Chevron. And what we've seen again here this year in the shareholder meeting is that this company continues to choose profit over people. And I'll say a couple words about what's going on in Ecuador. As you know, the communities there, 30,000 indigenous campesino communities, won a historic victory against the company for $18 billion. Huge. An appellate court upheld the verdict, and so basically Chevron has its back up against the wall. And but they're, of course, like they always do, acting like a fugitive, running from the law. They've said, we're not going to recognize the Ecuadorian court system, even though they asked to have the trial in Ecuador. But what is now going to happen, and which is very, I think, important, is that the communities, they have a legal judgment, and so they could go anywhere around the world that Chevron has operations and try to enforce that judgment. So everywhere in the 100-something countries that Ecuador or that Chevron has assets, the Ecuadorians can go and seize those assets because Chevron has refused to pay. And what we've also seen over all these years is that, Chevron has treated these communities with the same kind of arrogance and disrespect that they had when they were operating there. In Ecuador, what happened is very simple. At the time, Texaco used a cheap substandard technology to drill for oil, a technology that in places even like Texas and Louisiana was outlawed. In the early 1900s, Texaco decided that the people in the forests of Ecuador don't matter, and so they went in and began to drill for oil in a place that was a pristine rainforest. This was the traditional land of the Kofan. The Kofan leader is inside the meeting right now with us today, Robinson Yumbo. All the land that Chevron operated was traditional Kofan territory, and Chevron went in with, I think, all the subtlety of an invading army, and they literally opened up 330 or so well sites, over 1,000 different toxic waste pits. And what they did was, when all the oil that comes up out of the ground and the toxic sludge that comes up with it, instead of putting that back into the ground, which you do in the United States, in Ecuador they dumped it into the rivers. So they dumped, we're talking about 2 to 3 billion gallons a day of this stuff for 28 years. So, of course, we know what happens. Communities there have had epidemics of cancer, of respiratory ailments, skin problems. There's no clean water. This is the Amazon rainforest, and there's no clean drinking water. These communities have been forced off their lands. They've lost much of their tradition and culture. They've lost the ability for sort of food sovereignty. There are no animals. Their rivers are contaminated. There are no clean, there's no fish to eat that are not contaminated. The river systems that they use to bathe, to swim in, to wash their clothes are contaminated. So, but again, what has Chevron done? In addition to that disaster, they've made these communities wait for 18 years to get clean drinking water. So, but the good news is that we're finally close. This is a sort of the last lap on a marathon legal trial that the communities inside are letting the company know today that from here forward, these communities are going to take that judgment, that $18 billion guilty verdict, and they're going to go everywhere and anywhere that they need to make Chevron pay up. So thank you all for being here, and it's great to see a great crowd of all these people holding Chevron accountable. Thank you.
Viva Ecuador!
Thank you, Kevin from Amazon Watch. It just occurred to me I met you 12 years ago. It's a long time. All right. So